Hello, my name is David Malin, and I'm the instructor for Computer Science E1, Understanding Computers and the Internet at Harvard University's Extension School. You're watching one of our videos of the week. For more such videos or information about this course, visit us on the web at computerscience1.org. Enjoy the show.
Hello, my name is Ray Diaz. I'm one of the teaching fellows for Computer Science E1. Welcome to our video of the week. This installment continues our series on home networking. Last time we hooked up a home router to share an internet connection among multiple computers in our household here, our demo household as it were. And today we're going to talk about more deeply what's going on with this router and how to configure it for particularly wireless security. As we mentioned in our last installment, we have an ISP providing us with a public IP address, and that, through the router, is being shared among multiple PCs in the household. Well, how is that happening? The router acts as a sort of intermediary between the public IP address and the private network in the household. It is acting as a DHCP server, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP, by assigning private non-routable IP addresses to each of the devices connected to our home network. It's then translating those, part of that NAT, network address translation, so that traffic can be sent out the public, so to speak, pipe being provided by your ISP. In this case, the Belkin router is providing us with the non-routable address of 192.168.2.2. Most home networking non-routable addresses will start with the octets 192.168. Belkin just happens to go further with .2.2 for its first for the first PC hooked up to it. Other popular manufacturers, Linksys, D-Link, the Linksys, for example, will just assign 192.168.1.2. Really, these distinctions are mostly unimportant. It's just nice to know so that when you want to go to the administration interface of your home router, you know which IP address to go to. If you're unsure what device and what IP address you have, it doesn't hurt within Windows to open up the command window. You can do that from Start Menu, Programs, Accessories, Command Prompt, and type in the command ipconfig. This will then show you what your IP address is and what the default gateway is. In this case, the default gateway is our home router. And then you can open up your favorite web browser, type in the IP address of the default gateway, and you'll get the administration interface for your routing device. Again, in this case, that IP address is 192.168.2.1, and when that page pops up, you'll notice it's really quite busy. You'll notice too that this page is specific for the Belkin device. Again, other popular devices, Linksys, D-Link, have slightly different pages, but they're the same in spirit. They cover the same range of functions and options. So what's going on here is, in the top left-hand side of the page, we have LAN setup. Beneath that we have Internet WAN. Beneath that we have a section for wireless. And beneath that we have a section for firewall. Here on the main section of the page, we have a general summary of how we're hooked up to the Internet. There's some version information about the router we're using. There's a summary of the LAN settings for the private network. There's a summary of the Internet settings for the connection provided by your ISP. And there's a summary of some of the more advanced features you might have enabled or not enabled on the router itself. And we'll do a really quick overview of each of these major sections. When we click on any one of the links on the left-hand side here, we're prompted right away for an administrative password. By default, the Belkin device is not configured with any password. It's blank. This is true for most, again, of the popular brands of home routers. So down here on the Belkin, it just happens to be at the very bottom on the left-hand navigation menu, is a link for System Settings. And you'll see here that there's an administrator password. By default, the Belkin device comes with a blank administrator password. By default, the Linksys device comes with an administrator password of admin. You probably want to change that if you don't want other folks on your network to be able to go into the administrative interface and change your settings. So I can change that by filling out this form. Right now the current password is blank. I'm going to type in a new password of 12345. Not a terribly secure password, but one that we'll be able to remember for this demonstration. I'll confirm that new password, 12345. And this login timeout means that if somebody's trying to access my administrative interface and they don't have an appropriate password, they'll be timed out for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, they can try again. Should you ever forget your password, which happens from time to time, you can always reset the home router to its factory default settings with this handy-dandy reset button back here. Just take a pen or a pencil, push down the button in the back here, hold it down for several seconds, and then let go, and the system will be reset. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the changes so that we have that password of 12345. And then I'm going to go to my LAN settings. You'll notice here, like we mentioned before, that our private network behind the home router device is 192.168.2.1. That's the device the router assigns itself. And you'll notice here that the Belkin device is also, as we mentioned before, serving as a DHCP server. This is a good thing. You want this to happen. That way, computers joining your home network through the device are automatically assigned the appropriate IP address, subnet mask, so on and so forth, DNS information. And by default, this is great. There's nothing you need to change here. But it's good to know that it's here in case you do need to change it. Say you've got multiple devices chained together and you want each to be serving a different network segment. Again, not something that the typical home user will need to do. I can change that here. Okay? Okay. Through this link, you could see a list of computers connected to your router. If your router is working and you can get to the internet, you won't want to change any of the WAN settings. Though if you went to connection type, you might, for example, be instructed, depending on your ISP, to change from dynamic to static or vice versa, or use point-to-point protocol over Ethernet. That's really specific to your ISP. Best to get in touch with them if you have any questions about how to set this up. But the really interesting part is here in the wireless settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And there are 4 sections here. We can play with the channel and SSID. We can play with security. We can make this access point, this router, an access point for other routers. We can take off security completely and have the router just as a public access point, maybe like you would have at Starbucks or something. Or you can set up this device as a wireless bridge to allow other like devices to use it as their ISP. So we'll go here into the channel and SSID settings. Again, most of these you can leave alone. For the sake of security, however, some pundits will say it's a good idea to never broadcast your SSID. Some folks like to turn this check mark off, and what that means is the wireless router is no longer broadcasting to any other devices within range. Hey, I'm the Belkin 54G. Sometimes too it's a good idea to change the name of your SSID because, for example, if your neighbor who happens to be close by also has a Belkin device, an identical Belkin device, you'll both be broadcasting as Belkin 54G, and that's not a good idea. You might confuse wireless devices which happen to be in range. Who am I really talking to? Here in security, by default, security is disabled. This is not necessarily a terrible thing, but these days most folks tend to feel more comfortable with some kind of security enabled. You'll notice here that there are several options. Most commonly, no matter what type of device you have, you're likely to have an option of WPA or WEP security. For the sake of this demonstration, we're just going to select 64-bit WEP or wired equivalent privacy. And then you'll be prompted to input a passphrase from which 4 keys will be generated. So I'll go ahead and just put in a passphrase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and hit the generate button over here, and you'll notice that it came up with 4 sets of keys. What's going to happen now once we apply the security is that in order to connect to this device wirelessly, you will have to input one of these 4 sets of keys, and we'll show you that in a moment. I'm just going to hit apply changes. And now I'm going to disconnect my wired connection to the device, and I'm going to activate my wireless. You'll notice here in the system tray in the bottom right hand corner, our wireless connection is not connected to anything, but we can view available wireless networks in range. So we can view the available wireless networks, and we'll see here that the Belkin 54G shows up and that it's security enabled. I'm going to click on the connect button in the lower right hand corner. So then we're prompted for the network key. Fortunately, I didn't close that previous window, and I can copy it into here. I'll be asked for confirmation, and then I click on connect. This wireless laptop is trying to negotiate a security handshake with the Belkin device, and after just a moment, we're connected because we used the appropriate security key. So let's see if this is working. And we'll go to our good old favorite standby Google. And here we are, and it's working. And ostensibly, even though we're not wired, we are communicating with our Belkin device at 64-bit strength. Not terribly strong. Both WEP and WPA encryption schemes have been broken, but it certainly prevents the casual use of your wireless network by folks not in your household. Depending on what kind of laptop you have and what kind of wireless protocol it will talk, 802.11a, b, g, so on and so forth, you might want to tweak these settings or get a slightly different device. This one only broadcasts in the G range. By default, several commercially available routers you can use in your home come with firewalls. For some of them, the default settings already have that enabled. This tends to protect you from a wide array of common hacker attacks, and you can just leave it as is. On this particular model, there's not too much to configure either than to disable or enable the firewall. Another thing you can do to protect access to your wireless device is to use MAC address filtering. Every network device has a MAC address, MAC being Media Access Control. It's a unique address that identifies your specific network cards, and it can be used to prevent non-registered devices from connecting to your router. So how do I find my MAC address? If I go back here to my command window, and instead of just plain old ipconfig, I type in IP config/all, and you'll notice here this line for physical address. This long string is our MAC address. If I were to copy it and paste it in here, and then you'll see that my host and MAC address are added to the list, and only folks on this list are allowed to connect to my home router. The options and settings, like I mentioned previously, for the various models of home routers can change somewhat, but in spirit, what we've covered here is applicable to the vast majority of ones that you can buy for yourself. So I would invite you to, once you've got your own, go through each and every one of the options here and go ahead and try some settings, remembering that, of course, if you set something and don't know how to get out of it, there's the handy dandy reset button in the back. Thanks for watching.